How's it going, everyone? Welcome back. DJ Aceman, Big Don here for the Peace and Chaos program. We've been gone for quite a while, but we are back, and there's been a lot of things going on in the news. And just this Friday, the U.S. Supreme Court made a ruling on Roe v. Wade, overturning it as a federal right. So we're going to be discussing that tonight, discussing all avenues, all political implications of this decision by the Supreme Court, and what will be the political landscape moving forward in the United States. But first, how's it going, Big Don?
Good. I forgot to write a description for this. So, yeah, the reason why we're back, we've been on hiatus for a little while, but I think this is a very important issue to cover because not only is this a landmark decision within the country that could have a lot of significant impact on where we're going forward, but I think a lot of people are just generally educated about this issue and sort of what those implications could actually mean. So we're going to be trying to cover as much ground tonight as possible. We're going to be going over the decision. We're going to go over the reaction to it. We're going to go over policies, legality, morals, arguments, the whole 9 yards.
Yep.
And also, I am going to mention that we will be doing a call-in feature for the stream tonight. So once you get done typing the description, I will post the streamer link in the chat where you can go in, and then you will be in a waiting room in which we can invite you in and out.
Yep. And yeah, please feel free to call in, even if you can listen for even a couple minutes. We'd love to have a conversation with you, no matter what your opinion is. If you're pro-life, pro-choice, on the fence, whatever, we just want to hear your stance as well, and just have a dialogue on this, because this right here is an issue that is the biggest right now and on a lot of people's minds. So feel free to come in and discuss Roe v. Wade with us. But first, we just want to discuss a little bit of the history of Roe v. Wade. Roe v. Wade was actually decided in 1973, and it basically stated that abortion was a federal right given to women based on that. So, and then there are also numerous laws as well as to when abortions would be legal up until, depending on the stage as well. So stage 2, I believe, is where most of the legality is on that. But it has sparked a huge debate across the U.S. as to whether abortion should be legal or should be illegal. Should it be up to the states or should it be up to the federal government? This has all been within the debate for the past almost half century now. And we just have pros and cons, pros and con arguments for it. We're just going to review a couple of these before we start discussing some of the political responses to abortion. But for the pro-abortion, proponents say that abortion is a safe medical procedure that protects lives, while the contrary is that life begins at conception, making abortion murder. So that these two arguments, basically, one is saying that abortion is a safe medical procedure and that people are entitled to it, and that it also saves lives, and it also puts down the female mortality, mother mortality rate. While the contrary, which you see a lot in Christian ideology, believing that life begins at conception. This is a big stance in the Christian church and the Catholic Church as well. And these do pit against one another. And there are also other arguments as well around morality and health too. So it really is a one side. One is mostly based on, women's rights and women empowerment and the right to health. So more on the lines of human rights, while the other side is mostly on religion and ideology and the right to life. And it also pins human rights against one another. You have one side that believes the right to health and the right to women's health, while on the other side, it's the right to life as well.
Right.
So it really pins human rights against one another, morals against one another, and it really is an issue. And also, it also clashes with who should make the decision. The U.S. Should it be up to the states? Should the U.S. just not look at it anyways and just entitle everyone? All women should have the right to an abortion if they choose to, or should it be up to the states and they make the decision? Because it also clashes with politics as well, and that's why this issue is so sticky.
Yeah, I think to sum up the argument here in terms of what both sides argue is pretty much the the debate of, I think it comes down to different arguments. One is the debate of when exactly personhood is assigned. I think there's a differentiator between human life and personhood, and pretty much that's when we pretty much ask the question of when do we afford someone rights. Like, for example, if someone's in a comatose state where their brain's not really functioning or they don't really have conscious, they don't really have that much. I don't think they have as much rights as someone within a conscious state. I think that's one way to define it. Another way you can look at it is through debate between sort of that and bodily autonomy. How much is bodily autonomy valued here, since this is the female's body that she's ultimately making choices for, and how much should we value that as a society? Me personally, I'm of the mind that this is, I think, pro-choice. I'm generally pro-choice on this decision. I think in most cases, bodily autonomy trumps the right to the fetus's life, especially with instances such as failed contraception, rape, any sort of thing that would justify any sort of immorality. Now we can have a broad debate in terms of what exactly immorality is. It's a very morals debate, and I think there's also an argument to be made that the state should not influence this morality, especially along religious lines, as the United States is not really a religious state, established by the Establishment Clause. I think it's called that, if I remember from my freaking politics class back last summer. Again, I don't know crap about politics, don't sue me. But there's a lot of arguments to be looked at here. But the general decision here, if we want to go into Roe v. Wade specifically, the original ruling was that that this was a federal law because this encompasses the right to privacy under the 14th Amendment, I believe also under the 5th Amendment. And now this is overturned because there's not really a constitutional basis for abortion, meaning that it's not really specifically said in the Constitution, therefore it should be delegated to states. That doesn't mean that abortion's fully banned, but we're not giving states the right to decide which states can have abortions or not. And do you want to pull up the states in terms of what their policies are?
Yes, so there has been a list of states, and also since it was leaked back in early May, a lot of states have been preparing for what we call trigger laws, and trigger laws are basically, or trigger bans. They ban abortion under most circumstances and go into effect when Roe v. Wade was overturned. So just the other day, some of these trigger bans have already been in place. Some have been in place. Some will go into effect 10 days after the ruling. Some will go into effect 30 days after the ruling. Really depends on which state you are in. There also were pre-Roe bans, which were old laws that were still on the books up until 1973 when the Supreme Court decision was made, and now they can go back into effect. And there were also some laws that just were passed that limit abortion to an early gestational age or ban it near totally. So here is some of the states: Wisconsin, South Dakota, Missouri, Kentucky, West Virginia, Ohio, Arkansas,
Pull up
Oklahoma.
the NPR article.
Oh yeah, this is it.
Yeah, now you're switching between tabs.
Oh, my bad.
Share your entire screen, not just the tab. I think even though it's good.
Yeah, that was my bad. Real
This
quick.
is the technicalities of streaming, by the way. It's very fun. You also try it. And also that reminds me, I should probably post the link to the stream if you guys want to call in.
Oh yeah, bear with us, guys. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, we're there. We're just getting back to the swing of things. We've been gone for 5 months, so.
Yeah, here we go. We got it up, guys. Sorry about that. But yeah, here's some of the states that were highlighted here. So the states in brown, like dark brown, those states are banned. There's already a ban in effect. While states that are orange on this map, they have trigger bans. The state of Michigan had a pre-Roe ban, and Arizona as well. And the 6-week ban is in South Carolina, Georgia, and Iowa. So each state can make their own laws pertaining to Roe v. Wade. While states in gray are still considering, or they're considered, or they will just continue to recognize abortion as a right for women. So New York, California, Massachusetts, DC, also Washington and Oregon as well have all recognized that. And I can also Governor Gavin Newsom of California tweeted, "Abortion is legal in California. It will remain that way I just signed a bill that makes our state a safe haven for women across the nation. We will not cooperate with any states that attempt to prosecute women or doctors for receiving or providing reproductive care. And that right there was from Governor Gavin Newsom. And he also announced just the other day that the state of California, Oregon, and Washington will be considered, they would call them the Western Alliance on abortion as well. So it has really pitted um, different states against one another, and it has also it has also led to the continued polarization that we are seeing here in the U.S. So it just shows you how each state is operating on this topic and how it really is banned. It's really pitting the red states against the blue states.
Hey, we got the Whatever Kid, by the way, in the chat. Thanks, Whatever Kid. Really enjoy your diss tracks there. I'm personally pro-choice. Pro-lifers make it seem like pregnancy process is easy. 9 months to have a fetus in your stomach is a lot of time. Yeah. Do you want to go into general thoughts on the ruling here? We're not afraid to share opinions here. I don't care.
Yeah. Honestly, so yeah, I definitely agree with you, Whatever Kid, there too. I'm kind of on the fence on this because I both see like both sides of it. I try to analyze both sides and I understand. I think that yes, it does come down to autonomy. Bodily autonomy, I think, is key here. And that's the reason why I lean a little bit more towards the pro-choice side, because I also see the pro-life side and the arguments for that. But yeah, I think that yeah, pro-lifers, I think I do agree there that pro-lifers do believe that pregnancy, the process is easy, in that sometimes they don't understand the full case scenario of women, especially in the case of pregnancy. So I think that's a good point as well. Um, and yeah, I think especially it also comes down to case by case, especially in cases where women have been raped or incest was involved. Um, that's where they should there should be a reconsideration. Um, and I also understand the cases where if it's a financial burden, you also have there's also other choices, and it also comes down to the biology too. If you're in stage after the first trimester and there's a heartbeat, I think that needs to be a big consideration, especially
I
as
want to
to
post these
whether.
hypotheticals. I want to debate about this for a little bit.
Yeah.
So, I want me. So, what if I know there's a disease out there that pretty much limits the baby's brain capacity? They pretty much are brain dead in the womb. But if they have a high heartbeat, would you consider that baby to have personhood?
That comes down to like autonomy too, because you could personally because let's give the case, for instance, let's say you're there's a person 30 years old, is brain dead but has a beating heart. Is that considered a person? Like, that comes down to what is considered a person, what is considered a living human. And that would be considered a living human, but are they autonomous? And I think that also comes down to autonomy too.
So, do you believe? So, if that's the case, do you believe that consciousness is pretty much the indicator of personhood?
um
I know we're getting very debaty about this. I mean, it's a very heated topic right now, but I want to get your general thoughts with those sort of arguments in mind.
I think it, oh man, that's a hard question, because again, you could be living but you may not have feeling, or you may not be able to control your bodily actions because you're in that state. So that's kind of that's a hard one.
Yeah, and those laws, by the way, are very hard to legislate because it's very subjective in terms of if you want to assign a time frame to exactly if the baby has a heartbeat or has like consciousness. It's very hard to like legislate that. I mean, I guess you could theoretically just say, well, we could if you want to get like an abortion, we need to check if the baby has some brain activity going on in there. Which, I mean, I'm not sure of how practical that sort of is, but I think you get the idea of that. I think my general argument is I agree that bodily autonomy usually trumps life in this case on case by case basis. I think generally you as a human don't have rights to your body parts, and people should not be using them to to help sustain their life. Like, for example, we don't do forced organ donation because that would be a violation of a person's autonomy, even though that can objectively save lives. We don't force people to do that. So, I mean, that's kind of my stance there. In terms of, I want to get to I think practically, I think that's another argument to consider in terms of their utilitarian stance. I think the abortion bans in states is not really going to do much in terms of what's actually happening now. Already in red states, I think in South Dakota's example, there's one abortion clinic in the entire state, and South Dakota is a pretty big state.
Yeah.
So, and with a low population, so not a lot of people in South Dakota are having access to abortion. So that's not really being limited in terms of what the actual research is out there in terms of what I've seen. I mean, I think safe abortions generally just don't happen. Well, at the same time, you're not really preventing it. It's kind of like prohibition in a way. It didn't really stop sort of the use of like alcohol and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
What people are going to do is turn to unsafe means of abortion, which I think that's kind of an argument you're hearing now. People say banning abortion means banning safe abortion, which does ring true.
Okay.
And I think there's also a lot of sort of benefits to abortion as well. Like, for example, you could see 15 years after abortion laws were implemented, crime rates tend to go down. It obviously serves an economic benefit to the mother or the parents of that fetus being aborted, because they don't have to deal with like the financial burden of raising and taking care of the child. But that's generally my policies on it. I don't really focus on the practicality perspective. It's more of I think it's 100% a moral argument in terms of where you stand on abortion.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think it definitely comes down more. I think it's more moral over legal, in the way that where it should be interpreted should be federal, should be state. I think it's more of a moral judgment too, and it comes down case by case because not every case is the same. It's not cut and dry, but yeah, I definitely see it as a moral as well, and I think that bodily autonomy is that one area that I think that's what's key, and I think that's what brings a lot of proponents who are pro-abortion to the argument, and that's what makes their argument, I think, more popular. And we can look here too. I can share this screen as well. Yeah, I'll share this screen real quick. Hold on. It's actually a Pew Research poll, and I believe it came out this year, and it's pretty interesting to take a look at what Americans believe. Yeah, it says about 6 in 10 Americans say abortion should be legal in all or most cases. And it basically goes into detail, saying that, I mean, it shows partisan gaps as well. And yeah, I mean, you see it here too. I mean, it's mostly a partisan thing, but also it also shows that there's also men and women, and it goes into demographics here too. Like people ages 18 to 29, it should be 74% say it should be legal in all cases, and it's over 50% in every age group. I mean, you see here with the older 65 and up, it's 54%, but I mean, you see college grads 64%, post grads 69%, some college 63%. But then with religion, it kind of changes. I mean, Catholics, 56% of Catholics believe that it should be legal in all or most cases, which is very surprising, I thought. But it shows you how even a lot of Americans, I think, coming to this decision, they see it more as a bodily autonomy decision, and that women should have the right to make their own decisions, and it should not be left up to the government to make a decision on a woman's health. So I thought that was very interesting, especially with the public views on abortion.
Yep. And do you want to get to? We also got a comment from Kai here. He's chiming in, but let's go to the reaction to it, and then we'll get to Kai's comment here, because I think it was a pretty interesting question.
All right, let me go pull it up.
So let's hear.
There
You
have
want to
been
read that?
many talks about a great divide being built within America over time, especially since 2020. With the overruling of Roe v. Wade, are we close to civil war, or is that over exaggerated? I've heard that Civil War talked about a lot, and I think that especially after the election, how polarized we were, and even before the election. And every year when it's an election year, like we have midterms this year, and in 2016 with the presidential election between candidate Hillary Clinton and former President Trump, you saw a lot of polarization, and I think it's normal. But I think that over time, we have become so polarized to the point where some Americans just can't see eye to eye anymore. So you hear stories about people who are, fighting, or they don't even get along with their friends, which is really sad. I think that there's always this, I think that everyone should have the value that everyone should be entitled to their own opinion, and that you should never let your opinion, your political opinions even, affect the relationships that you have with people. But we see that time and time again with a lot of issues, guns, immigration,
The
healthcare,
economy.
economy, yeah, economy as well, and here too with abortion. And I think that with this issue, since it really affects all people, um, no matter who you are, even men too, it affects families. This is a social issue, since it affects so many people, and it also affects demographics, um, different racial groups. I mean, it affects everyone, depending on your religious orientation as well. Um, this issue is personal to a lot of people, and I think that when politics get in the realm of personal um, issues, such as abortion, um, it's going to lead to a greater polarization because people are going to pin one another against each other, and you're going to see violence, and you're going to see protests, and you're going to see people looking at each other as the other. When in reality, I think that there should be more discourse, because if we don't have discourse, I think that we're kind of going to go on the wrong page here. And I don't think that we're going to get to the point of a civil war. I mean, God forbid, I hope not. But I do think that with the polarization, how polarized it is, I am afraid to see, if we're not at the extreme yet, what is the extreme. So that I think that we won't get to that, but I do, we've heard it a
I'll
lot
get to
now.
it.
Yeah,
I'll
we've
throw
heard
my
it a
two
lot.
cents here.
Yeah, yeah.
So I agree 100% that this is absolutely dividing Americans more and more. Now, to the point where this is, you can make an argument this is legitimately segregating states here in terms of, where you can get access to abortion. Do I think it's going to lead to like the practicality of a civil war happening? No. I think there's just way too many factors to actually lead to.
Mhm.
Depends on how you define a civil war. I mean, if we're
I mean, if
talking
we're going to
like
be talking about like 1865, then I don't know.
if it's
Then no.
1865, I doubt that will happen because first off, many because I think many people, I think the government's a lot more centralized. So
Mhm.
I think conflict between like political groups is going to be less likely, especially since how there's a lot more independents now. I think
Mhm.
independents are the largest, but a majority over Democrats and Republicans,
Mhm.
or the minority, whatever. They're pretty large. There's a lot of people in the middle. I think just getting cross. I think the practicality of that is pretty much just saying, well, there's gonna be a lot of people caught in the crossfires with that. So no, I don't
Mhm.
think an actual civil war is gonna happen, but I think there's gonna be even further division within the country, especially with the things that could be coming. We
Yeah.
have I think the midterms are gonna be huge. I think the next presidential election is gonna be huge, and the next couple of Supreme Court decisions are going to be huge indicators of where exactly the country is heading. But we'll get to those in a minute. But
Mhm.
no, I don't think the actual civil war is very practical in this case.
Yeah, let's actually, the whatever kid just chimed in again. He says the stat about Catholics is interesting and surprising. I was raised Catholic, and one of my CCD classes was talking about how abortion is murder. Yes, I'm also Catholic as well, whatever kid, and I went to Catholic school for a little bit throughout my life, and I always heard that we actually had a class my junior year of high school, and it was on how abortion, well, it was on like morality and social issues. And abortion, we took a lot of time on abortion, and we were basically discussing, I mean, we also had the debate of we were talking about the political side of abortion and also the religious side of abortion, and how at conception, how that is considered a child or is considered a being at that moment, and how the legality behind that as well, how that goes against the Catholic belief. But I think it also comes down to how people have multiple identities in the U.S. as well. You can be a Catholic Democrat who is like a social democrat, left leaning, and I think that that's where I think politics and identity kind of come into play. You could be it really matters about, I think it's more religion, but also politics too, because you're both a citizen in the US and you're also, probably a part of a political party, or you have, some form of political background. So it is interesting to see that. I think it also is interesting to see the ages too, especially the demographics. I'm not surprised that 18 to 29-year-olds find it legal in most cases, while 65 plus, see it 54%. Oh, still over half, but it's a little bit less than 74%. So looking at those numbers, it is interesting. Also here, it also just has like white, but like not evangelical, 60%. But while you look at other races, I mean, here, black 68% believe that it's legal in all cases, while Hispanic only 60%. I think that comes down to religion too. And Asian, actually, they're the demographic who supports abortion, and most to legal. It should be legal in all or most cases at 74%. So it also comes down to where you grew up, where you went to school.
Environments play a huge factor
Environments play a huge factor as
in
well. So
terms of what your political views are. I think we all agree upon that.
yeah, I think that is interesting though that you mentioned that. We also have, I think, FKP also. Yeah, Kai also said may get on in a bit to chat more. Okay, you're definitely more than welcome to come back in. And the What Advocate also says, I think the division in America has to do with people's ego and feeling like their opinion is or has to be the right one. And I also agree there too.
Oh, geez, I think we live in an era, especially with the age of the internet, where we have all this access to information and disinformation, whatever you want to call it. I think people's egos are just heavily inflated because they have echo chambers, they have all these sources claiming they have authority over what sort of information happens and what information is false. I think we also have and that's also leading to like an era of sort of anti-establishment, where you just sort of saying, screw whatever
Mhm.
whatever the thing it is that's being said, especially within politics and culture. And there's like agenda against us, which I mean, you could say whatever you want in terms of whether or not that's true, but I think that's definitely leading to like information, like an age where you're sort of saying, my I'm there I'm this is not my opinion, this is pretty much fact, and you're absolutely wrong about this. That's just leading to a lot of dishonest bad faith discourse within politics. I mean, look at the Senate, for example.
Mm, exactly. I think that that is true, though. I think that people can't see eye to eye because they think that their opinion is the only right one. And I think it comes down to entitlement. It also comes down to selfishness. Sometimes people just are uninterested in hearing the other opinion too. So it comes down to those factors. But yeah, I think that that also is not helping. I think it's kind of the societal values as well. I think that, I mean, I don't like using the word degenerates, but I think that there are people out there that could hold on,
Keep
hold on,
going. I like
hold
this.
on, that could fit the checkbox. And I don't mean it to like throw shade on them. I'm just saying that I think that the way that people grew up, I think that they could maybe disregard opinions and be selfish and never really want to hear other people's opinions or perspectives, and that right there could also bleed into their political life where they say, well, you know what, my way or the highway, screw your opinions, I'm the only opinion. And if you get, let's say we have
I think
330
that's the
something
Supreme Court
million,
right now.
let's say, yeah, I mean, that's the case, right? 330 something million people in the US. Gosh, even half of those, let's say half of the US is like that. I mean, that's probably high, but still there's a portion of the US, and also specifically in politics, where they don't see eye to eye. They can't see eye to eye. They think that it's their opinion of the highway. They never do their research on the other opinion. And that's also what's leading into this, toxic political environment. And if it goes down that whole, I don't know for how many more years, we could see that. I mean, that's what happened with the Civil War. People did not see eye to eye on a lot of issues. They viewed each other as the other, and it led to, not seeing each other as the other and leading to violence, and a war broke out because of that. So I think that everyone needs to, recognize their opinions, also jump out of their comfort zone too. I think that if you learn more about other opinions, educate yourself, this will also help you out in the long term. Because if you understand different opinions and you understand different approaches and as to why some people believe that way, and you understand perspectives, that's not just going to help you. It's going to help out the community too, and also help out the political landscape that you're a part of. Because if we don't have that in society and there's no discourse, then how is anyone ever going to understand each other's opinions and where we can work on issues that we should all come in together?
You hear that, guys? You guys are degenerate.
Well, I'm not saying everyone.
Not me.
Okay, I said there are some people out there that could be considered. I mean, I think the degenerate, that's also a term that I kind of think has been overused a bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's hyperbole, but continue.
It's hyperbole, but I think that some people who fit that box of degenerate also are the ones that are, selfish, entitled, because a degenerate is someone who, doesn't contribute to society, also is someone who, kind of does not embody the values that society promotes. And if our society is promoting, tolerance and understanding and transparency, and you don't embody those things, you could technically be placed in that box, even though people don't want to be that title. But I'm just saying that as to, the division in people's egos. If you're egotistical and if you're really not, if you're just never understanding others and you just think that it's your way or the highway, that there's an issue there. And, you may have other bad values too, which could lead to this issue in the US in the division. So yeah, that was my 2 cents on that.
There you go. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right about this. I think I'm not even going to add to it. I'm just going to leave it at that.
Yeah.
I think you hit the nail on the coffin here in terms of, how people are just in these freaking echo chambers and not willing to, talk with one another as fellow Americans in terms of what exactly these issues are. And I think you're right. We do promote this idea of tolerance, and we should absolutely tolerate the decisions of people. And I think in this case, I mean, you could argue whether or not the Supreme Court was, trying to be as constitutional as possible, or whether or not doing other constitutional legislation. There's no denying the fact that, once, all those Republicans got into the courts, that this was going to be coming to us. People can deny all they want. If we look back then, we could look at saying like, okay, the court justices, because I remember this was trending that the Supreme Court justices lied about saying whether or not Roe v. Wade was going to be a law. But I think political biases are just heavily influenced in this now, especially when you look at sort of the comments that Thomas made. Now, then again, this is only Thomas that we're talking about, Clarence Thomas, in terms of what laws are that he wants to put on the books in terms of what could be overturned or looked at as constitutional. But I think and we'll get to those laws, but I think just judging by, I'll get to it right now.
Yeah, I'm going to get to it right now.
I think a lot of those are just flat out immoral in terms of, promoting the rights of people within the LGBT community. And of course, we got contraception, which, I mean, when you think about it, if you want to prevent abortions, I think contraception is pretty much a huge way of doing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is honestly probably the first thing that most people come to mind is contraception.
This is what gets me about. Okay, I'm gonna be on my high horse here. This is what gets me about freaking Republicans here. They say they want to be, they want to ban abortions. All right, fine. Well, I mean, we could disagree about that, but in terms of policies that can actually prevent abortions, stuff like contraception, sex education, Republican, and financing of helping families out. Republicans absolutely don't freaking support that. So I think they need to back up their policies here, and they're not going to do that because, I mean, in their mind, I think there's a huge amount of morality that wants to be legislated here.
Mhm. But I think it also comes down to who your, constituents are too. If you're in a, county where, let's say, 75% are pro-life, and you're a Republican running for Senate or running for or running for the House, and your personal opinion is that you think that it's a woman's right? You think that it's pro-choice. If you're pro-choice, but you're a constituent, your constituents are all pro-lifers for the most part. You're going to be. I mean, if you want to get that, if you want to win your race, you're going to have to appeal to the base. Pardon the rhyme there, but
Yeah, but that's not really the Supreme Court, though. Supreme
well,
Court.
oh, yeah, okay, yeah, the Supreme Court. I mean, that's different because, again, I mean, they're appointed, and I mean, there's liberal judges and there's conservative judges, and it also depends on when the vacancies take place. I mean, Clarence Thomas, I believe, was under back in the 90s.
No, I think it was Reagan.
Yeah, Reagan.
80s.
Yeah, 80s. So he came in the 80s, and it really depends also on when the vacancies are. I mean, under President Trump, there were 3 vacancies where he appointed Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Coney Barrett. And those 3 justices, they were all pro-life. So it also comes down to, again, who the commander in chief is at the time, because it also comes to the debate too of the institution of the Supreme Court. There have been
There's
there
plenty of
was a
arguments right
question.
now that the Supreme Court's, not very democratic.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that a lot of Democrats. I mean, it's going to come down to politics too, of the question of stacking the court. How can 9 justices make all these rulings in the U.S.? Only 9. That seems undemocratic. I mean, that's been the criticism for years now. How can 9 justices, and most of them, I mean, they're all political appointees, how can they all make decisions that reflect the majority of the U.S. when, in this case, I think there were some instances where 79% of Americans were believe that abortion should remain a federal right for women. And with that, people always make that assumption or not make the assumption, but make the criticism of the Supreme Court as an institution. So I think it also comes down to who is the president in times of vacancy, and also whether would the institution be better off if there were more seats. But then that will lead down the political hole where then every president will want to bring more or appoint more justices who align with their opinion. But it comes down to how effective the institution is as a whole and how it performs. So I think that that's the main criticism of the Supreme Court right now, and a lot of people, a lot of proponents of pro-choice have said that argument really recently, and also in the past too.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of hard to. Ultimately, that's hard to change because I don't really think that the fundamental branch of of government there. But I don't know. What does that mean for the future? Well, that's a good way of segueing through what's going to happen. We'll
Yep.
talk about let's talk about midterms.
Let's discuss some midterms here. Oops, got to get back into the sharing thing real quick.
Now, I'm just going to say this out front. I think Democrats are pretty screwed here.
I still agree there too.
I think this is going to help Democrats because we just pulled up the information. I think the majority of Americans believe that abortion should be a right. But I think I don't think this is if you look at like actual polling in terms of like priority issues for Americans, I think abortion's like really like a major one.
Mhm.
Maybe among some groups, because there are definitely single issue voters that do vote in terms of where their abortion stance are. But Democrats are falling under a lot of heat for this, for not only for their incompetence and just handling past administrations in terms of what can be done to prevent something like this, to the fact that as I alluded to, I mean, the Democrats are kind of sucking right now in terms of how the economy is going, and they're
Mhm.
just actually being blamed for that.
Yep. And it also, comes down to the argument as well, where I mean, it's also like a trend in politics too, where the president's party usually does not uh, perform relatively well after during the midterms. I mean, we saw the blue wave in 2018, and we could also see it here again in 2022, especially with some market issues right now that the Biden administration is currently facing, with inflation, and also what we're seeing with oil too, and other financial
Yeah,
hardships that some Americans.
general
So,
economic
yes,
trend.
yeah, a lot of strategists on both sides have really analyzed this. And I think that it's really going to come down to where you live. And I say that because I think that, I mean, there were several races actually in the south of Texas where recently, I mean, those used to be strong suits for Democrats, but in recent years, they have actually had, there was actually a big red wave there, and they actually just elected a Mexican American, two Mexican Americans, or two Latino Republican candidates for the House. And those used to be like, I think President Obama won those by like 15 points in 2012 and 2008. And now those swung to the Republicans. So we have already seen, and we also saw in Virginia too, the race there where Governor Youngkin was supposed to lose that race, I think, he was down 12 points. But in reality, he won by, I think, 1.4 points or something like that. So it was actually a big win. And that was the bellwether election right before the midterms. And those are usually a clear indicator as to how each party will perform
Right.
in the midterms. So I'm just looking at this article right here. This is Jessica Tarlov, Democratic strategist, and she works for Fox News. She says this won't overtake the importance of inflation in the economy more broadly on the midterms, but protecting the right to choose and ensuring Democrats get to pick Supreme Court justices will be on voters' minds. It will also turn off some moderates who shifted left to support Biden and now see just how extreme Republicans are. So, mind you, this issue I mean, we had the horrible shootings last month in Uvalde as well, which also,
As well as Buffalo.
yeah, as well as Buffalo too, which also became, very clear. And it also brought up the debate about gun control
Yep. And gun
and
violence is generally
gun
a pretty
violence
high.
too, generally high, which is also a political issue as well. But I think that here with abortion, I think Democrats, what they really are hoping for is that they can, and also you have the January 6th commission going on right now.
I
So
don't think that's going to matter that much, to be honest with you.
I think it won't, but I think that you'll see a lot of attack ads with that, and they'll try to stigmatize Republicans who are, still the face of the GOP or Trump allies. I think that that's where they will see a lot of that. But I think that abortion and gun control are going to be the two biggest issues that the Democrats can run on. As for Republicans, they can run on the economy, they can run on energy, they can run
I
on
mean, they can
foreign
also run on those
policy.
issues as well.
Yeah, those issues as well. Especially they could talk about the Supreme Court and those issues too. I think that all those issues are credible. But I think for Democrats, the big ones are going to be abortion and also gun control. And that's where they're going to have to elate their base, get their base out to vote. Because if they aren't going to vote in this race, I mean, if we see numbers like 2020 again, and let's say some Senate races and House races, um, that could be a key indicator. But I think that at the end of the day, Democrats are really going to have to hammer down on these issues, and they're going
Yeah.
to have to run on that. and maybe cut out the divisive politics, because sometimes people are just uninterested in that, and they're more interested on the issues. And I think the issues here is probably going to be abortion and gun control.
By the way, one thing I forgot to bring up in our discussion before this, and then we're gonna go to what Kai has to say. Did you hear what General John Cornyn had to say?
I did not know.
So, in response to the recent ruling, and then he responded to a tweet by Obama saying, "Today, the Supreme Court not only reversed nearly 50 years of precedent and regulated the most intensely personal decisions someone can make to the whims of political and ideologies, attack on essential freedoms of millions of Americans." That was a tweet by President Obama, former President Barack Obama, and then Senator John Cornyn said, "Now do Plessy versus Ferguson / Brown v. Board of Education."
Wow.
So, I mean, that's just one senator, but I think this also goes back to your point of sort of divisiveness right now. I mean, I think there's generally a more shift on both sides in terms of politics.
Yeah.
Further away from each other in terms of like right and left wing stuff. But wanted to throw that in there. And then in terms of midterm stuff, even if I think Democrats still have an uphill battle because there's definitely a lot of distrust among Democrats in the Democratic Party right now.
Yes, that is true as well.
And it's going to come down to, I think there's definitely a lot of distrust amongst people like Biden, Nancy Pelosi, in terms of their inaction to do anything. So I think it's going to take a lot more than just say, go out there and vote. I think if Democrats want to have any sort of leverage, they need to call up their Congress people. They needed to advocate people to actually run on these issues and actually do it seriously.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be a lot of political advocacy that needs to happen with it in sort of that progressive race in order to make any sort of change. And it's definitely not going to come in the short term.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, let's go to what Kai has to say. Want to bring him on?
Yeah, let's bring Kai on.
All right. FPK.
It was good.
KP, what's going on?
Not much. Just doing some work and just listening to you boys a little bit.
Hey, man, thank you so much for listening in.
So, as of lately, what's been going on around here, considering California is a very democratic state, have we gotten into the reactions, like in terms of the protests so far? Well,
we haven't really.
Protests.
We haven't really discussed any of the protests yet.
Well, there's some pretty big stuff.
There have been a lot of protests. New York,
I know in
Chicago.
Arizona there was they threw tear gas at protesters because they were being on a government building door. So there's that. I know in Iowa there was a person that ran over a bunch of protesters, and then in Rhode Island.
Oh yeah, there was the candidate.
There was a fight amongst people running in elections there. So
I think it was the one in Iowa you mentioned. It was because there's video of it. It was many of those quote unquote protesters were going up to the car because they're blocking traffic, and they started attacking it, and the guy just peeled out.
I actually saw those today as well. Those 3 incidents that happened. I know that I heard about the tear gas, and I also heard about the Rhode Island incident too. But yeah, I think that we're going to see a lot of demonstrations, and I know, especially in California, Governor Newsom has already said that the state is going to be, an ally for pro-choice women and just pro-choice proponents in general. And I think that we're going to see it. I mean, the heated ones are going to be. I mean, there are a lot of heated ones and a lot of big mass protests and states that are going to remain the same on abortion. So New York, Illinois, we see California as well. The Northeast states that are not going to change. But I think with Arizona, now I'm going to pull this up again just to show you the states one more time and just remind our viewers of the states. Let me just go check that out real quick.
Phoenix has been pretty bad the past 2 nights. It's been pretty bad. They've had to put barricades at the Capitol building over there in Phoenix.
Yeah, they have a pre-row ban. Let me go pull this up.
It was because the previous night the quote-unquote, the reason why I say quote-unquote protesters is because these people are doing some things that you shouldn't be doing, such as spray painting and attempting to hurt people and just property.
Yep.
But they went to supposedly the state capitol building in Phoenix, and they were trying to bash in to try and break into the building while it was in session. I think because they were voting on the similar case of abortion, and they actually had to go to a recess.
Oh
But I
wow.
think the result was they had to launch tear gas to disperse the supposed crowd,
hmm
and they all left. Luckily, a good amount of them left, and they just came back yesterday. They came back yesterday night, but they had to put up kind of fences around. They still got into the area, but they didn't breach the Capitol building, luckily. And I'm surprised that's not being talked about as much.
I did see a little bit of that today. I've also seen a lot of like attacks in the news on like pro-life centers across the U.S. You know, there was an arson attack, I believe, in Wisconsin, and then there was also an attack on there was also vandalism on a pro-life center in North Carolina as well. But I've seen a little bit of that, but I have seen a lot of just protests in general. Most of them are peaceful, mind you, but the ones that do get out of hand, like in the case of Iowa, Arizona, and also in Rhode Island too, those cases, I mean, those protests did make the news for the wrong reasons. But I think that in most cases, most of the protests have been peaceful. But I think we're going to see, as the weeks go on, more protests um, across the country, and especially, I think once specific states, start putting in, different bans. I mean, I know that in states like Virginia, I think in North Carolina too, they're going to have talks about this. So this could be later on. But in states already where they have a pre-row ban, and Michigan already had a pre-row ban, and South Carolina, Georgia, Iowa with the 6-week ban already put in place, and there's also ban in effects too. So and trigger bans too, which I'll remind everyone what a trigger ban is again. A trigger ban is where abortion is banned under most circumstances and goes into effect with the fall of Roe. And this could be uh, after a specific time period. So in some states it's 10 days, others it's a month, others could be longer or shorter than that period of time. So in some states where it could be going into effect sooner rather than later, we're going to see more tensions arise because of how this is going to affect a lot of people's lives.
Yeah, I agree with that. We'll just have to see what plays out. And I think how some of these protests will go down will determine a lot as well.
Yep.
Because for many places such as Portland and LA areas, and also Seattle right now,
Yep.
it's for them, they don't like them
Yeah.
because they're going back to similar to what happened in 2020.
Yep.
But right now it hasn't escalated to that bad yet, luckily.
I think it's also going to come down to whether or not their state is going to take action. And I know that the Western states already made an alliance. Governor Newsom had a press conference, I believe, just the other day, and he discussed that Oregon, Washington, and California will be states where abortion will continue to be legal, and that there will be no changes. But I think that those states, especially where women maybe from Idaho or Utah or states there, they may have traveled there just to get their voices heard. But I know that those states will continue to have abortion legal. So I think that I don't think that um, tensions will be heated again. I don't know. I'm not on the ground there, but I think that since it's not going to change, the president there in those 3 states, that it won't get as serious as in states where there's already trigger bans in effect. Where we see it in Tennessee and Mississippi and North Dakota, Wyoming, Idaho, Utah, and also the other states here that have a ban in effect. I mean, we're going to see mass protests in Texas, Ohio for sure. I'm pretty sure Wisconsin will see a lot as well, and Iowa too. Don't forget Iowa. So yeah, I think that we're going to see states continue, and once those effects go in, and once they become legal law, how is that going to look? Are we going to see mass demonstrations? Are people going to move in? Are NGOs going to get involved too? Because now international human rights groups are criticizing the U.S. This took center stage with the G7 just over the weekend. So how is that going to look moving forward too? So I think it's going to come down to different states and when they make their judgments and when those become official.
I agree with that. It's mainly based on now we're giving it to the states to decide.
Mhm.
But in terms of should the G7 get involved? No. I don't think they should get involved at all.
Oh no, no, no.
They don't have to bother with us whatsoever.
Well, this
We
took
don't bother
like
with them.
they.
They don't bother with us.
I think the thing is though is that a lot of countries, view the U.S. as like the model or the cradle of democracy is that's what the US has been described. And I think with foreign affairs, recently with the ruling which happened on the same weekend as G7 in Austria Austria this year. This took center stage where a lot of countries like Germany, I believe the UK, um, they all were, making the argument that, why is the US, supporters of women's rights, also proponents of health rights, human rights, why are we seeing this there where this is a restriction? So it's more of like a verbal criticism, but they can't really do anything because this is domestic politics in the US and they can't get involved in that. But they
Yeah,
can
that is true.
criticize.
They
They
can't
can
criticize.
criticize. And I think we're going to see it too with different groups. I know Jane's Revenge has been discussed, and
Oh boy.
also other pro abortion groups. They're probably going to continue to hold rallies in states
Oh yeah,
where
they're gonna hold them
we're
until
seeing restrictions. So I think that over the summer, this is going to be a new thing. I think that 2 years ago we saw the BLM protests and how widely coordinated those were with NGO groups, with youth groups, and we're going to see the same thing too with pro-abortion groups, pro-choice groups, all across the U.S. We'll see it probably in D.C. a lot. We will see it a lot probably on the West Coast too, but I think in the states that are highlighted on this map here, this is where there might be a lot because this is where it's really going to go into effect.
Yeah, to hear that in terms of protests,
Mhm.
it's both the positive and the negative. I think the ones that are very peaceful and well organized and they're just out there to say their peace of mind, that's fine. But the thing is with many of the ones that were broadcast and also because we have social media nowadays, right?
Mhm.
To some, it's seen, okay, that's a good thing. To others, it's seen as, no, not this again. We
Mhm.
we dealt with it 2 years ago. We do not want to deal with it again, especially in places such as Portland, and I think it was in Wisconsin a little bit, in New
Mhm.
York City, and even LA. They do not want to deal with it again. And in
Mhm.
LA right now, it's starting to ramp up. Portland, it's starting to ramp up again, where they're starting to smash up businesses and starting to assault people, which is something you do not want to do.
Mhm.
And funny thing is, it was during an election year. And what's going on right now? It's an election year.
Mhm.
It's quite weird to see that these things have been happening during election years, but at the same time, you have to roll with it and see what happens. Just when you're going out there, if anyone's listening, when you're going out there and protesting, protest peacefully.
Mhm.
Things that were Jane's Revenge are saying is not the right thing to do. You don't be violent, because violence is just not going to help your side at all.
Mhm.
It's going to make you look like a massive hypocrite more than
Mhm.
anything. And if you get arrested, um, either you'll get bailed out by certain politicians because they decide that's fine, or you suffer the consequences, which you got to learn.
Mhm.
I mean, I would think that makes sense. Do you guys agree on that, or?
Definitely agree. I definitely agree.
yeah, I think I do want to pose a question to you here. Let's say these protests were to happen? Do you think there should be like a conversation? You think there should be like a more of a national conversation based on sort of these protests, or
Oh
should
yeah. I mean, oh, go ahead. Continue what you're saying, Dondo. Like, I didn't want to cut
Because
you
there's
off.
obviously going to be like deflection and saying like, okay, we should probably focus on the issues instead.
I think with this kind of an issue, it's big, and it does make sense to have protests, which peaceful protests, however, that is being put into question nowadays of what people consider peaceful, because ever since the term coming out mostly peaceful has been thrown out, I think it was 2 years ago during the whole Minnesota riots,
Mhm.
even though people call them protests, they were riots. That's just been thrown out there, and now it brings to question, are certain protests actually peaceful, or have they become riots?
Mhm.
And to what extent should we be holding them accountable? And at the same time, with the whole defund the police scenario, it doesn't make things better. It means police will be short of staff and they might not want to work anymore because they're not having the incentives and the moral anymore for it.
I
And
mean,
then they'd also have to go through more training as well
that's
in
a tough
terms of
conversation to
controlling
have
this.
because it goes into the question of what exactly starts a riot in the first place. Because a lot of times you can make the argument that a lot of these protests were agitated. A lot of people, now, of course, there's going to be cases of terms of people are just showing up just for the sake of rioting, and they do that, and all hell breaks loose from there.
Oh, like an Antifa or something like that?
Yeah, like Antifa.
Well, in terms of that topic, it's a controversial one as well because many people believe they're not real, even though they will go out and about flying their flag. I think they
I
pretty much
actually never heard
exist.
that one before.
Huh?
I actually never heard that one before.
Yeah, no, some people, I've talked to people, even some, one of my friends, he's a big communist, but we still talk and, hey, we're still friends. We're still friends. Even if we don't meet eye to eye, we're still friends, unlike other people out there. But he says, no, Antifa is not real. And I was like, hmm? You sure about that? They sell merchandise and they have their own websites and everything like that. There's even one called Rose City Antifa, which is in Portland, and they've been organizing a few things. They even organized lots of the quote unquote protests in Portland in 2020. And he said, no, they don't exist. But for
Jeez,
some reason, the
how
Proud
do you
Boys
justify
exist.
that?
And he's like, yeah, they exist. What about Antifa? No, that's just a belief.
I think that
Baffles me.
Oh yeah. I think that on the lines of Antifa, I think that we've seen them come up over time, and I think one of the arguments as to why they're not considered a formal group, even though I mean you see people always at demonstrations wearing like the black and the black umbrellas, and usually are looking to fight people. I think that the reason why they don't consider them a formal group is because there's no leader of Antifa. I think that if you look at Andy Nigo, I think that's his name,
Andy, no.
Andy
Yeah.
No, he does like all these. He got into a fight with Antifa and they threw like a milkshake at him, which a milkshake isn't like a milkshake you order at like
Yeah,
a
it's
it's a concrete pretty much. It's like a concrete weapon. You could just fill it up with concrete and throw it at someone. And I think he got hit in the face with one, but he got into an argument, and he's been one of the people that have really tried to unmask who Antifa is. And there have been a lot of I know that a lot of it's been in the news a lot too. Who is Antifa? Are they good? Are they bad? Because the name anti-fascism, that's where it comes from, and it's basically a movement. I believe it started back in World War II, where they were basically fighting the Nazis, and also the
that's where
brown
lots of
shirts
the
too.
time it comes from. Yeah,
Yep, that's
normally,
like the
but
historical origins. But I think the question or the reason as to why people don't consider it like a group is because there's no leader. There's no face of Antifa.
Yeah,
Everyone's
it's
anonymous.
fundamentally a decentralized movement. I mean,
It's
yeah,
decentralized. Yeah.
it's also a good tactic to use as well. If you don't have one leader, then the government's not going to know who to get. But at the
Mhm.
same time, it shows that like, oh, look, there's certain organizations saying like, oh, Rose City Antifa or something like that if they're posting. But the thing is, then you need to figure out who the person is.
Mhm.
And at the same time, it begs the question because they're supposedly anti-fascist, who are considered the fascists then?
Mhm.
Because there was a video that came out a while ago. I think it was a journalist, an independent journalist. He was out just video recording the protest, and a lady started calling him a fascist and lo and behold, Antifa members started to roll up
Hmm.
and they started to be around him, and I think they knocked down his phone. So he wouldn't record them anymore. And this lady, when she was saying he's a fascist, oh, she was yelling it from her lungs, man. Goodness me.
Hmm.
She wanted him gone.
Yeah, their tactics are very interesting. They usually, I think some Antifa, like a lot of them are usually on the younger side, and they also use those umbrellas as a way of a shield, and they move kind of in a unit too. You'll never see an Antifa member by themselves, which kind of shows you like they're a wolf pack, like a group of people. They always go together. So some of their tactics have been interesting, with coverage and footage. There have been, videos, constant videos, whenever there's protests of them, fighting. Different groups like the Proud Boys or any group that they see as, deemed fascist, quote unquote. So yeah, it is interesting to see how they operate. And yeah, they usually do like they try to vocalize who they're targeting, shun them, and then go after them. And yeah, with the whole with their uniforms and the way that they look, they make it so that it's a form of anonymity. Um, which is weird how they operate. And yeah, it comes also down to who is running it, and if the FBI can't figure out who it is, then they'll never figure it out. And I remember back in the 2020 debates, Trump brought up Antifa, and I remember that President Biden said that, or then Vice President Biden said it's an idea, and he probably was briefed that it wasn't an organized group, and therefore they couldn't be considered a hate group or whatever um, you want to call it.
There also can be the argument that it's more so just it's a political tactic as well. Because in terms of what I say, the FBI probably doesn't know who leads it. I wouldn't be surprised if they did. But I think at the time of an election like that,
Mhm.
they probably just didn't want to give it out because then that would be seen as a negative towards the Biden administration or the now Biden administration. That would
Yeah.
be more
By the
of
way, I want to chime in
fuel.
here, but
Yeah. Come,
Yeah, go
on.
ahead, Don.
yeah, I think this is a whole separate conversation to have here. So,
Okay.
in terms of like Antifa and stuff like that, like I think we could all agree that political violence is generally bad,
Yeah, it's
Mhm.
bad.
and you definitely see. I mean, Antifa is obviously no example of this in terms of how they might agitate protest. You also make that an argument for for any sort of political group that's it has like violent intentions and stuff like that.
Like Weather Underground and like even way back.
So I think it's going to be a debate in terms of like I mean, it's yet to be seen in terms of what actually happens with these groups, but I think it won't be surprising at all to see if there's political violence because of this.
Mhm.
I do want to ask this. I want to focus back. I want to shift back to the topic here, and if you don't have to answer this, but just your general thoughts on the overruling, Kai, if you want to say that.
The overruling, I think with me, I'm similar to DJ Ace Man here. I'm on the fence a little bit about it. I think I'm in the belief that once there's a heartbeat, I don't think there should be an abortion. It's a living human being now, more than anything. But I think if you can do it in a certain amount of time before that happens, then sure. So, and under the circumstances of possibly if the woman is going to die, it's very hard, but I could also believe that, or not, I can't believe, I do believe that I think an abortion is right. So if you're to ask me, am I pro-life or pro-choice? I think based off of what has been happening, it's still 50-50, but for some reason I'm starting to lean more pro-life, but I can still go back to pro-choice, especially with what I've stated earlier.
Yeah, we don't have to debate about this. I mean, if we wanted to do a debate show, we would, but
No, it's okay.
we already kind of did debate about it a little bit of this.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm 50-50 on it. I think a woman should have an abortion until there's a heartbeat. Once there's a heartbeat, you have to let it live. And For most people, I would say that's fine. They agree with it. If not, that's fine.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, I think that you're not alone, Kai. I think that there's so many people out there who are 50-50, on the fence because they recognize, both areas. And I mean, this is a
Yeah, it's
this
not
is a
just. By the way,
contentious.
just keep in mind here. I mean, I think that's also a fundamental debate here in terms of where exactly do you draw the line. Some
Mhm,
say, oh, it's at conception. Some say, it's at heartbeats. Some say, it's when they have conscious. I think that's also like a huge debate that could possibly happen, especially within the states that are deciding, like, okay, what exactly is the cutoff point in terms of what type of abortions we can allow. And
mhm,
generally, I think since Roe, I think until the third trimester is the cutoff point in terms of when you can have access to abortion. I think most abortions, I think over 90% of them happen within the first trimester of abortion. I'm not exactly sure what exactly the autonomy of the fetus is at that point in time, but that's generally the case for most abortions.
mhm.
Hmm.
Yeah, that definitely makes a lot of sense there. And yeah, it also comes down to there's also other issues too. It's not just about pro life, pro choice. There also comes down to the biology too. First trimester, second trimester, third trimester, whether it's at conception, heartbeat, or in the somewhere in the third trimester, and it brings up the question of whether the unborn child has conscience too. And there's also debates too about whether should abortions be allowed when the mother's health is in danger. Should an abortion be allowed when the mother understands and
I think
knows
in
that
those cases, I think most people, even pro-lifers, generally agree. If the mother's health is in danger, then absolutely abortion is justified because
Yeah.
if the
Yep.
mother dies of, it's like negatively affected to the point of death
That,
by abortion, then that's two lives gone.
yeah, that's one side I think, or not one side. One point I think both sides can agree on easily. I hope that if the
We
woman's,
hope.
yeah, we hope because there's some people out there now that's with what's happened now they start to switch sides, which is sad to see. But
Yeah, because they're
we let them do what they want.
getting stuck down the echo chamber there.
Mm,
Terms of in terms of beyond logic here, in terms of what exactly is this, how much should we be caring about the like a fetus or not?
yeah.
Let's see here. Do I want to ask about like your thoughts on like future Supreme Court decisions, like Thomas has referenced contraception and then same-sex marriage? Do you think those, practically speaking, I guess your opinion as well, will be brought up and potentially overruled by the Supreme Court?
Hmm. I hope not. Do I believe they'll bring it up later on? Possibly. Will anything be done with them? I don't think so. I think with something like that, and we also, I would say what's more important too for people to look into is to actually read the entire case document of what was it? It was called Casey versus, for the one that overturned Roe v. Wade, if
No, it
you
wasn't
guys know.
Casey.
It was
Hmm?
Mississippi,
It
right?
was Casey versus Planned Parenthood, which
Okay, it's
affirmed.
important for people to like read over the entire thing unless they have an abbreviated version of it because just going on mainstream media every time they're going to be throwing something at you and then you read the entire court case it's something totally different. But do I think they'll overturn same-sex marriage and all that? No, I don't think they'll go into that. I think what Thomas was trying to state is in terms it was not constitutionally ruled properly in terms of I think it was he believed it was rushed or something like that. I don't know. We'd have to ask Thomas himself or read through the statement again
Mhm.
if you have that. But I don't think it will be overturned. I don't think those two will be overturned. I don't believe those two will be overturned. No. If those two get overturned, then things are gonna get spicy around here, extra spicy. I would also say, do you guys believe this? Because as you mentioned before, Brett Kavanaugh voted in favor of the overruling. there was the whole scenario of Brett Kavanaugh almost getting killed by I think it
Yeah.
was a pro-choice advocate.
Mhm.
But luckily, the man, he reported himself and he got arrested. Do you think that might have been another cause
No, I think
for
he was
going
gonna.
down this path?
No, I think he was
Because,
gonna overrule on it regardless.
yeah. Well, at the same time, before there was also I think it was like there was a gun ruling in New York as well,
Yeah,
which was important as well. But I have a weird feeling that just that happening was just, okay, yeah, we need to get this done with now. They're gonna do this test. We're gonna do what we want to do. That's just what I thought, especially seeing the ruling now in the whole Kavanaugh situation.
Mhm.
It just seems like they want to play hardball, we'll play hardball now. And I don't think it's gonna get any better.
do you think
But
that's morally right though, in terms of the Supreme Court's saying, okay, we're just gonna be, they're gonna be dicks to us, we're gonna be dicks to them.
well, I think in terms of the Supreme Court, they have to go by what the Constitution says. They
Yep.
can't be
Mhm.
stating, and I mean, of course, they're elected by certain presidential elects. They have to go by what the Constitution states. And at the same time, over time, the Constitution is interpreted differently. And they just went off of what they believe the Constitution reads as such right now. And they gave the power back to the states instead of the government.
Mhm.
Let's see here.
But to make it long story short, because I ramble on too much, my apologies. No, I don't think those two cases will be overturned. I don't believe so.
Yeah, there's also one about
And also packing the courts, no, do not pack the courts because that'll just ruin it entirely.
Yeah, I see that too. I think that packing the courts has been something that um has been kind of a newer um suggestion
yeah, ever
that has come
since
up in political circles. Um but yeah, I don't know if that really would happen. Um Again, it's been 9 for a while. And I don't think it should change because then that would just
I think,
undermine the institution and I think it would politicize it.
yeah, I mean the thing, that's a tough question to figure out because while you want to promote like a gridlock within Washington in terms of balancing out power. I mean that yeah, that's tough. That's interesting to think about because I mean I'm pretty sure Republicans didn't really have the intention of packing the court. It just came down to someone leaving or dying within the Supreme Court, and then they're just saying, okay, we have the control over who gets in next, and we're just going to appoint our people.
Yeah,
Mm.
but I mean, overall, this is situation is shocking right now still, and it's just you need to see what happens this weekend. I mean, we're nearing the end of the weekend. It's almost Monday now, but let's hope nothing bad happens tonight. And like I should say as well, this ruling in the future can be overturned as well later on
I don't,
if the
not in the
court.
short term.
Well,
Well, not
not
in the
yeah.
short term, of course, but once if there's a changing of the court, of course, or they have a similar case and they look at it again, they can overturn it. So it's not completely gone.
It's not, but it's very sort of hard. I think
Yeah.
it's very hard to get it overruling. I think I think the best bet for Democrats, and I gotta look up how the amendment process is done, but probably just get like an amendment guaranteeing reproductive or healthcare rights
That
to people.
Yeah, and there was also yeah, that was the thing. Like they wanted to pass a law. This has always been in talks. I think I think that President Biden can sign an executive order on deeming, federal lands or federal properties places where like abortion services can be carried out. and also I believe that he can extend, healthcare, the healthcare system to include abortions. But I think that it mostly has to be done through Congress if they want to pass anything, and it has to be at least 60% or 60 votes in the Senate
All
as
right.
well. So they're going to
Can you
need
filibuster it?
bipartisan support. Huh?
Can you filibuster it though?
Ooh, you probably could.
Possibly,
I'm
yeah.
not too sure. I'm not too sure.
That's the problem, though. With something like that happening, would just build up more division. I mean, it's been happening for quite some time already. Like you mentioned before, the Donald Trump election was kind of a catalyst for it, but then 2020 happened, and I think that just drove it up even higher with COVID and then all the protests or quote unquote riots as well that were going on.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't make things any better. 2021 was pretty laid back, and then going into 2020 with the economy not doing so good, gas prices, and now this, it doesn't make things any better. And in terms of the election coming up, it's a red wave right now. It's pretty much a red wave, and this can be a good way for Democrats to get more votes, possibly.
Yeah, I think we can generally have consensus in that.
Yeah, we can agree on that. This can help them. They just need to utilize it properly
Mm-hmm.
because we all know they can mess up again easily. I mean, any party can.
Yep.
Yeah.
But overall, I think based off of how the economy's going, gas prices, and yeah, it's a red wave right now because I think more people are concerned about, can I put food on the table? Do I have enough money for gas? Just the general necessities.
Mm-hmm.
Something like
Yeah.
Roe, of course, is important, but still the average American is going to be more concerned of, is the economy going to go back up? Can I pay for gas at, instead of $6 a gallon, can it just be 3 instead?
Yeah.
And also negotiating with, I think Biden recently negotiated with Saudi Arabia and
Yep.
mainly the Arab nations that
OPEC. Yep.
control majority of the oil. That doesn't look very good.
Yeah. I mean,
That
that's a whole
doesn't look
debate
very
in
good.
itself.
Yeah, but
And I think
again,
we're
that's a
gonna.
whole nother debate. But overall, I think right now it's a red wave, and the American people want to kind of go back to not paying as much for gas and having a higher economy. Then they'd be more focused on such matters as the January 6th committee and this a little bit. But I mean, of course, it makes sense. You know, this is a big topic, so of course, there's gonna be lots of people on it. But I think they would be more concentrated if the economy wasn't so stagnating right now, and the
Mhm.
possibility of a recession happening.
Yeah, definitely for sure. I think that there's a whole lot of issues on the voters' minds when it comes to midterms, and they're going to evaluate the current incumbents who are running again for reelection. And especially with the economy, and we see with gas prices and inflation, they're really going to take that into consideration because that affects their everyday life. But you're also going to see other issues too, like now abortion, gun rights, um, even foreign policy to some degree, and those are also going to be taken into consideration. But as to how much is abortion going to play a role, I think it could. But again, the thing that I notice a lot is that sometimes when events happen, or um, since the news cycle and since issues come and go, it really depends on what's on the voters' minds closer to when the elections are. So we're about 3.5 months out, or actually more, like 4 months out until November.
Yep.
So could this actually still be on the minds of voters? Yes, but could other issues, take center stage over this? Yes, and that's where I think both parties need to continue to rile their bases up on this issue. Specifically, Democrats need to focus on this issue a whole lot more.
Right.
I think that if they focus on this, they focus on guns, they will do fine. I think that they will do better than expected. Better than expected.
Yeah, because
I,
I think even though it really is a high priority issue for the average voter, you will get a lot of voter turnout with hot
Yep.
button issues such as
Yep.
abortion.
right. I will say this. It will also be, they also have to look into July when Chairman Powell will come out and determine if they're going to hike up the rates again. If they
Mhm.
hike up the rates again, it's not going to look good at all.
I mean,
Everything's
it's not
going to
going to
go
look either
down.
way.
Yeah.
Well, it's not good right now, but if he's going to say we're going to hike it up another 75 points or so, that's more than what was expected because originally it was going to be 50 points. Luckily, it wasn't 100 points. It was 75, but still, it's not good. And if he says they're going to hike it again and possibly even more, then that's just not going to be very good overall and for a long term.
Mm.
Because I still think the topic of abortion will be a long-term topic. However, it just depends on which one weighs more going into, like you said, the election.
I mean, the
The
problem with
topic
that
of
is,
abortion or how the economy will be by then. Because I think during the summer, the economy is going to go up and down so much. And lots more people are going to be focusing on that.
yeah, I think with the issue of the economy, I mean, not a lot of people realize how much stake the Fed has in sort of controlling
Mhm.
inflation. I mean, that's ultimately the purpose of interest rate hike is to sort of limit the amount of inflation or money circulation that's going on. So, but if he does like hike it up to a point where it's going to be a massive economic blow, then yeah, that's going to look terribly on Democrats
Mhm.
because
But
people are not going to care about the Fed. They're
Yeah.
just going to naturally blame Biden or Democrats in general. So
Yeah. Yellen or whomever. Yeah, but I think that's definitely those points are definitely relevant. I think that what we should do is have a whole episode about um inflation and the economy, the state of the economy, and
economy.
oil, energy, all that, because those are all
That's going to be
relevant.
one complicated stream.
That would be
yeah,
one complicated stream, but I think that we could definitely cover a lot of that. Go over some inflation. We could even look at the price of certain items and see how much they've gone up in the past year, which is wild because I saw like the price of chicken went up 17%, meat went up like 18% or something. Like a bunch of foods went up in price. You also had the baby formula shortage too, which was a whole other issue. Supply chain issues. So yeah, that's going to be a huge problem that voters are definitely on the minds of.
yeah.
Yeah.
But if anyone's out there questioning, like, he doesn't care about the Roe v. Wade overturning, I do. I'm just stating that in terms of the average American, I believe that possibly the economy will weigh more than the ruling and certain other factors going into the elections because most people, they'd like to be economically stable and have a
Mhm.
house and have a job as well and not have to
Mhm.
pay $7 a gallon for gas. It's even gotten as bad over here in LA area to being like $9
Oh my God.
to even sometimes 10,
Jeez.
depending on the
Wow.
pump. Yeah, it's not very good. Even some pumps, they just didn't care to put the price on in my area. Or not the, yeah, they didn't put the price on in my area.
Wow.
They just didn't put it on because it's either people aren't going to go there or they just don't want to show how much price gas is. But still, I think no, the overturning of Roe v. Wade will still play a important factor into the election. I just believe that the economy and gas prices will speak a little bit more compared
Mhm.
to that because this one is long term.
We have
Both
a
are long
question
term,
for
but this one is going to be determine if some people can have a job
Mhm.
or not.
all right. The whatever
Because
kid is back.
we do not want 2008 again.
I mean, 2008 is a whole different scenario.
Yeah,
I mean,
no, I don't think I hope it doesn't go to that because
I mean, we
again,
can talk about subprime mortgages all day and how the bankers
oh yeah, no.
messed
Oh
up
yeah,
there.
subprimes.
Yeah. Everyone everyone go watch The Big Short or read the book as well. Oh wait, we have a question here. Here, you want to read it,
Whatever
Big Don?
kid is back. And by the way, thank you, whatever kid. Actually,
Oh yeah.
once he can call in, but I don't
Yeah.
understand if he doesn't. But whatever kid asks, how much do you feel Biden deserves for inflation? much blame? Yeah, I misread that. How much blame do you guys feel Biden deserves for inflation? That's a very difficult question because ultimately presidents don't really have the reality is presidents don't have that much say in terms of economic impact.
I
Yeah.
don't know. What do you think, Don?
I mean, I think he did. That's a tough question because, I mean, you gotta look how sort of money circulation happens. I think Biden, if you want to look at sort of how much we're spending, I mean, we're still spending a lot. Actually, Biden has decreased deficit spending since Trump got in office. So, I mean, he's still. I mean, we've been well over budget since the Clinton administration. So the last time we had a balanced budget was that. In terms of, but I think Biden generally has very limited say in terms of inflation and stuff like that because you also got to consider global supply chains like that, and supply demand. I mean, naturally, if supply is not really exceeding demand there, and I mean we're relying heavily on sort of imports from other countries. That's sort of what happened with COVID. Then I mean it's kind of just messed up regardless. And I mean you could say that Biden's economic policies haven't really helped. Which I mean you can make there's some validity to that, but ultimately I don't think he deserves I don't think he should be crucified for it.
No.
Nah. Yeah, it also comes down to the Fed too. The Fed is the one that controls interest rates. They oversee the SEC as well. But yeah, it usually is the president who gets blamed, even though they can't do a whole lot. But I think that where people blame the president is mostly, I mean, I think a lot of it is on. Sometimes they call out about failed campaign promises, and
Yeah,
they see the president as the messenger of what policies he or she are going to put forth when they are in office. And sometimes voters and their opponents always love to go ahead and just bash them, especially when the economy is not doing well. So I think that Biden doesn't should not get as much blame as he does. And I'm trying to say that in a nonpartisan way because there have been so many factors that Biden was not responsible for that went out of his that he couldn't control, which has affected the U.S. economy. I mean, last year there was the hacking of those meat suppliers in Australia, which affected the price of meat. You also have supply chain issues, and some third world countries that have affected technology and different industries related to the products that they make. You have the baby formula shortage as well, which led to the closure of there was a closure of a baby formula factory in Michigan, and the U.S. A lot of voters blamed the Biden administration when in reality it was a private. I mean, it had to do with the supply from a private corporation.
yeah,
And then there's also inflation too, and those are just some um, market issues that have occurred that Biden really has no say. And I mean, we're also just coming out of a pandemic too, so there is going to be expectations of inflation. So yeah, to answer your question, I don't think Biden should be blamed a whole lot. Although I do think that he should, take more of a focus and really, form different task forces on the economy in order to make it better for Americans. I mean, he just put the tax holiday, which is like 18 cents, I believe, on gas. So that is a minimal thing to do. But there's still Biden still and his administration still need to do more, and also the other responsible entities in the U.S. government need to do more. But yeah, to answer your question, Biden doesn't deserve all the blame, but he does deserve some.
What's funny is that tax break of about 18 cents for gas. It's like the equivalent. You know that meme of the flex tape guys putting the seal
yep.
on the
Mhm.
thing and it just goes through?
Yeah.
That's kind of the equivalent of that right now. A little bit like this will help. Yeah, for like a little bit. But to answer your question, I think no, he doesn't deserve the whole blame. This is like you mentioned, DJ Aceman mentioned earlier, this is something that's been going on for quite some time. I think it mainly started during COVID, especially because not as many people were working. We were all at home. We were trying to adapt again, and the economy was at an all-time low. And with the Fed, I think one of the solutions to try and get us back up was, and I'd have to look into a bit more, was just to do this. With this one simple task that the Fed can do, they can print more money.
I mean,
And
let's face it. I mean, I'm
they
gonna
did the,
argue. I'm gonna argue this.
yeah.
This I think inflation has been long
Oh yeah, it's
been
been
a thing.
coming.
Been long coming before COVID. I think
Yeah.
COVID just kind of accelerated it because I think we've been at pretty artificially low interest rates since
Yeah.
like 2010, and then obviously we have obviously we're spending a lot of money and we're giving, and then during the Trump era we were giving tax breaks to people, so not a lot of revenue was being generated. So I mean, no crap, the economy was going to do well. It's just how much money is being flowed into the economy that doesn't really have that much value to it, because I mean our currency is not really based in anything solid like gold. We've been off the gold standard since the 1960s. I mean, if you want to make an argument in terms of what it is based on, I think it's just based on US GDP and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, monetary policy is just a whole different sort of can of worms in there. I mean, if we want to do like an economic stream about that, it's gonna take a lot of time to cover, and we gotta find a way to like simplify it to some extent.
Yeah, but overall, they printed more money, and eventually, over time, this was going to happen. I believe even Chairman Powell probably knew it. Trump probably knew it, and even now Biden probably knew it. It's just some of the policies that the Biden administration, and I will also state the House of Representatives and the Senate have passed, didn't make things better. They've made them worse. The one thing too is
It's
with
almost
the
like you can't trust these politicians. I need to
yeah,
bring back
no,
the
what a
I'm bringing back.
surprise.
I'm switching. I'm bringing back the Senator Armstrong.
We bring back Senator Armstrong. He'll make things so much better. And he changed his profile pic to Senator Armstrong.
Making the
just
mother of
recognize
all
that.
omelets here, Jack.
There you go. There you go. We
Right
need Senator
over every
Armstrong.
egg.
I actually hope, before we get back on topic, it would be funny because you guys remember that one guy who ran as D's nuts,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah.
I hope Senator Armstrong gets like a significant
Yeah,
amount
some
of
guy
voter
has
turnout.
it says like Senator Armstrong, and he gets like 5% of the vote, or something like that.
Mm.
Yeah, no, what you're saying, whatever, kid. Says Trump supporters blame Biden completely for inflation, but would be up in arms if inflation happened under Trump and you blamed him for it. Yeah, well,
Yeah,
if you're
definitely.
to look at, I'm not completely blaming Trump for everything. I still think he played a role into it. I'm not blaming one person over the other. I think each one equally had their own part to play in it as well.
Yeah, the big reason is, I mean, go back to the supply.
But I like your statement though, whatever, kid.
That is a absolutely based statement from whatever kid.
Yes, based statement. But no, I think it's with both of them. They get blamed. Even the Fed gets blamed for it, and the House and the Senate get blamed for it as well. It's not one person that you blame more than the other. Everyone equally gets blamed, and in the end, we end up here. It's just now that Biden is in this situation, he just needs to figure out how to get us out of it. That's all we need to figure out. Like if it was Trump, I'd say, hey, Trump, what are you doing? Come on, we need to get out of this. And if he doesn't do anything about it, then it's like, what are you doing?
I think, though, the whatever kid brings up a good point. And I think that Trump supporters, I mean, it also comes down to petty politics, too, where I think people won't acknowledge when, the president that they didn't vote for is doing well. And when it's easy to criticize the president that you didn't vote for when things are not going well, and it's hard to criticize the president that you voted for when things are not going well.
Oh yeah.
And I think that Trump supporters, if this was happening right now and Trump was in his second term, I think they would probably blame, I'd say, a bunch of things, and they probably wouldn't blame the president. But I think or if they would, it would be minimal like blame on the president. I think it would be mostly on the Fed. It'd probably go after
Democratic senators and also House
Democratic
Representative members.
senators,
Yeah.
House members, probably Chairman Powell, even though I believe he's actually Republican by party affiliation.
Yeah.
They'd probably blame supply chains. They'd probably also, this is an interesting one, blame globalization.
Yeah,
We've heard this a lot.
I would see that one,
Globalization
yeah.
would be criticized a lot more, I think, especially since the Trump base is,
they're heavily nationalistic. They want to,
like
they
economy
want
as
everything
well.
to be made in the USA.
Yeah, made in the USA. And
And
that's
it's
a
wishful
huge
thinking, but
criticism.
at the same time, we have to realize America doesn't have those resources anymore that we once did, and that we have to cooperate with other countries to an extent. I don't want it to be like the United Nations, not the United Nations, the European Union, where they say, "Oh, you must do this because all the other countries say so." I'd say, "No, I do not want to do that." You
Hmm.
get what I'm saying, though?
Yeah, I
definitely
think we
understand.
should make policies based on saying, "Oh, it worked here. Why can't it work here?" Well, there's a lot of we gotta look at
Yeah.
all the variables in terms of how it might disrupt the U.S. because the U.S. is a lot more of a different country than say Sweden.
Norway or Sweden, yeah, because you get that example, and they're fine examples as well. But that's the problem, is the population size and the difference in culture as well. Culture is that's a main keystone in it as well.
Mhm.
And you have to understand their culture in order to integrate to another culture as well. And you have to understand that culture. Because just saying, oh, we should bring this policy because it works in this country, it's wishful thinking. But if you analyze another culture and then try and find the connections between them, then it can possibly work. But if you just implement it into a country's culture that does not agree with that at all,
Mhm.
it'll make it harder and possibly might not work. But I'd
Yeah.
say, if you're getting some people that are interested in it, then it's a plus. I mean, makes sense.
Mhm.
All
Definitely.
right, do
Definitely.
you want to give any closing thoughts there?
We should get
Yeah,
whatever
definitely.
kid in here.
Get whatever kid in here.
Yeah,
Oh,
whatever
whatever
kid,
kid.
get on, man.
Whatever kid. We want
Whatever
you.
kid, we want you on
We
here.
want the diss tracks.
Yes.
I think he just dropped the diss track today.
Did
Actually,
you just drop a diss track? I got
Sure did.
on this is a little off topic, but who was the girl there? One of the
Uh-oh.
people that was on Dr. Phil. Yeah, she
God.
like she made fun of the cancer patient. Remember that video that came out, the entitled Brat, who like
Oh no.
made fun of a girl. She's a streamer. Yeah, this came out like last year, and all the YouTube channels were talking about her. But I guess she has a YouTube channel now, and she like just is disrespectful. She's a brat. Yeah, he just did a diss track on her today, so gotta go give
Who
that a
is this?
listen ever. Who is this? I don't really know who the. Let me actually go look it up.
Okay.
Yeah,
While
I'll
you're
go
looking
look
it
it
up,
up.
we're gonna try and get whatever kid on if he can.
Oh, jeez. Is he even here? I don't know.
Tessie, yeah, Tessie,
Tessie.
Test.
yeah. She made fun of a cancer patient.
Oh my goodness.
And she was on she's
Oh,
like
no.
the second coming of Bad Baby, but yeah,
Oh no.
No.
Don't need another one. No, please no.
Dr. Phil. Yeah, Dr.
Dr.
Phil has
Phil.
all the cloud chasers on now. It's like a cloud
Yep.
chaser show.
Yeah, they're easy to
Crazy.
dogpile. I mean,
Dr.
whatever
Phil
kid
moment.
did it rightfully so. I'm pretty sure the lyrics are pretty good as well.
Yeah, you gotta go check it out.
Fire lyrics.
Yeah, but on the issue, going back now to abortion now, just our closing thoughts. This is just my thoughts here. I think that what we saw with the president of overturning Roe v. Wade, a ruling that has been in effect for almost 50 years, was a shock to most Americans. But I think that when you look at it and you look at all the appointees, especially with the 3 vacancies under President Trump and his promises to, appoint, pro-life justices, it was kind of seen as inevitable in recent years. It was just a matter of were they really going to do it, and if so, when? And I think that they just saw it as the right time. In Mississippi filed a lawsuit, and here you would go. 6 weeks ago we had the leak, and then on Friday was the day that they made the ruling, and it was determined that it was going to go back to the states. And we went through all the debates tonight, pro, against, areas of consensus, areas of no consensus. And just for the future, I think that this will be an issue that will be on the ballots. Will not be on the ballots. I mean, could determine some races. I think it's going to be more of an issue that, whomever the Democratic candidate in 2024 is, this will be a bigger issue because it'll be the presidential election. I think for midterms, it won't be as much, but I think for the presidential election, even though this issue, because I mean, every presidential election they ask, "What are your thoughts on abortion?" Like that is the social issue that is always discussed in presidential elections because it's so important and it affects so many Americans. And this could affect more of the 2024 presidential election in comparison to the midterms. I think it still will affect midterms, but since midterm races are only within certain areas and it's not nationwide, um, that's what it's going to make it. But I think that for the future, we're going to see more protests. Hopefully, they're peaceful. No one wants violent. No one wants to see violent riots or violent protests. But I think we're going to see more protests, especially in states where, if they haven't already, you know, put into effect trigger laws. But yeah, that's what I think we're going to see. We're going to see it affect mostly. This is my prediction: the 2024 election. This will be an issue that will be on center stage. Will be discussed during all three debates. Will be in attack ads on Republican candidates, and will try to rile up the Democratic base and also the moderates who, either on either side, are pro-life. I mean, pro-choice. But yeah, that's what I predict.
Okay, Big Don.
Yeah, I think my closing statement for this is, I think just based off political implications, I think this is pretty bad for the country. I think I laid out the reasons why. I think there's not really a lot of practicality with it. A lot of people are disappointed in terms of what the decisions were. I think we're ultimately more divided as a nation because of it. And in terms of going forward, I think it's going to be, I think with the upcoming midterms and then eventually the presidential election, it's going to determine a lot to serve, what the political landscape of the country is going to look like within the next couple of years to probably end of the decade there, in terms of what exactly the direction the country goes in. And then from there, I mean, it's going to depend on like if there's going to be conflict or not, like that or something like that. I mean, we talked about the idea of a civil war. I really think that's not going to happen. I don't think that's practical enough. But I think with this issue, with abortion being such a hot button issue, I think you're definitely going to see the fallout of it take place over the summer, and then we'll see what happens in terms of who we decide to elect.
Mm-hmm. All right, Kai, how about you? What do you see?
Yeah, I think the overruling of this will have major implications. I think it was kind of a warning once there was a leak coming out of that they're going to possibly overrule it. And it mattered more so on what people could do about it and the reactions that many had. And they didn't look very good, I would say, more than anything, especially with the whole Kavanaugh scenario. I think that just made things even possibly worse. And with that, this ruling is still shocking to me. And I would say for many, it will lead to many protests. And I possibly would say leaning towards riots, potentially in certain areas, most likely in Portland. That's the most likely place. But this, in terms of 2024 and this year, I'll say for this year, it will have major implications. It will lead to who will be voted in and who won't be voted in, and might lead to many blue counties or blue areas turning red. Now, not entire states, of course. California is going to stay blue for a long time. But it might lead to many switching to red instead. And especially with how the protests go, if they get too violent in certain areas that normally vote blue, they'll turn red. as for the 2024 presidential election, yeah, I think this will be mentioned quite a bit. And overall, it just depends on how each side can come up with their case and make it appealing towards the American people and give us hope, in a sense, because goodness me, we need it right now. We need it right now.
All
There
right.
we
Definitely.
go.
You want to close it
Definitely.
out?
Definitely. Guys, thank you so much again for tuning in. And thank you both to Kai and to the Whatever Kid for stopping by. Kai, thanks for coming in to discuss with Big Don and I. It was a pleasure. And you know what? Thank you, everyone who's also going to watch it on the playback as well. Just a reminder, you can always watch our videos on the playback. You don't have to attend the live Peace and Chaos program specials. You can go tune in later and go check out all our other great content, both GeoGuessr and other videos as well. Guys, thank you again. Also, just go tap the banner and follow us on Instagram and Twitter. That's where we make all our announcements of when we are going to have live streams. And press the like button, subscribe, and hit the bell. That's all for today. Thank you all again. See ya.